Good afternoon. Hello and welcome back to Track 2, Becoming a Stronger Advocate. We hope you enjoyed the networking lunch break sponsored by Avexis. I'm Angie Rowe and I will be your host for this afternoon session. As a reminder, this track is being live streamed and I would like to welcome our remote attendees and remind everyone to download our mobile app to use our live Q&A. In this session, leveraging digital tools for reach and impact, our experts will explore how they utilize digital resources to manage their organizations remotely and grow their community. To share their expertise, let's welcome Marie Rand, Managing Director of FAWare Global Association, and Eden Lord, Founder and CEO of CityMed. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All you. Do we have a clicker?
Do we have slides? Do we have a clicker?
We forgot the clicker.
Oh, there's a clicker.
We promise we will leverage our technology as soon as we have it in our hand. There we go. This is why AV and IT are our favorite people. There you go.
All right, let's see if it works. Hi, my name is Marie Rand. I'm the co-founder and managing director of PH-Aware Global Association. We represent the pulmonary hypertension community. I became a PH community member in 1993. In 1992, I gave birth to my oldest child, whose name is Chloe. This is her picture here. And she was sent home, and I was told she was perfectly healthy. At about 4 days, she stopped eating. I kept taking her back to the pediatrician. They kept telling me I was a worrying mother. And on day 7, when she turned blue in the doctor's office, she got rushed to the hospital. And they found multiple cardiac anomalies. So when she was 8 days old, they built Chloe an aorta using her subclavian artery and a piece of Gore-Tex because she didn't have one. It didn't. And we were told that she had a hole in her heart and that everything would kind of be okay. I think somebody said she'd never be an Olympic athlete, but otherwise she was just going to do just fine. On day 10, I went out to dinner for the first time. I left the hospital. My nephew had just turned 11. He came to New York City to see Chloe and to see me. And when I got back, Chloe was in cardiac arrest. And they proceeded to do a bunch of testing and found that she had a few other things that they didn't know about. One is something called diabetes insipidus, which means she was a sodium diabetic as opposed to a sugar diabetic. And another thing that they found was a rare neurologic condition called semilobar holoprosencephaly, which means she was missing part of her cerebellum and her corpus callosum. And they told me, so remember 1992, they told me to leave her in the hospital and let her die. They would watch her until she died and that I should go home and start my family over. My very, very Italian mother, and I will not curse on stage, said, no baby of ours is dying in the hospital. What will it take to get her home? And I had about 6-week journey in the hospital where I learned everything I could possibly know about medicine in a very brief amount of time. We put in a G-tube. And because she couldn't handle taking any of her medications, which were administered every hour on the hour, 24 hours a day. And I finally got her home, and she came home as a DNR. And we sat and we waited. And because they told us she would have no cognitive abilities, we didn't know what to expect. Think about 1992. They brought me a book, and it had one picture of a brain scan, and they said, this is kind of what her brain looks like, and this is kind of the description of what we think she has. That was all I had to go on. She came home, she started developing, she was doing things like waving bye-bye to grandma and grandpa and answering things like, where's the light, by pointing at it, and we were like, something's a little off. And I had nurses in my house, and at about 7 months old, the nurse said, do you think we could rip up her DNR because I think they're wrong? So I remember the night that we together took the DNR off from above her crib. We ripped it in half, and we went back to the doctor thinking that we were going to close a hole in her heart. And they said, oops, her aorta actually isn't functioning. One piece that they had put in kinked, and the other piece was working for her, but not well enough for it to last. So we went in for a second heart surgery, which she did beautifully. And then we went in for pre-op testing to close a very simple hole in her heart, and they came out and they said, she has a rare lung disease called pulmonary hypertension. She's going to die. There's nothing that can be done for her. and I took her home again. So that was my first 8 months as a mother, because she's my oldest child. And we started looking across the country at different hospitals, trying to find anybody who could give us any information about what this disease was or could help her. There were no answers. There was no one. And one day I went to her GI doctor, who was functioning as her pediatrician. She was actually going in for immunizations. And I was crying, and I said, I can't believe we can't find anybody who can do this. And he said, well, why haven't they sent you 100 blocks uptown? I was in New York City. There's a woman at Columbia Presbyterian who's studying this disease. Maybe she could help you. Then he said, don't take any of your records with you and don't tell anybody you're going. Just call her and tell her that I sent you. And I met a woman whose name is Robin Barst. She was the foremost expert in the world studying pulmonary hypertension. She had the first drug in clinical trials, and she was running the trial. And she said to me, we may be able to use this drug to lower Chloe's pressures long enough to close the hole in her heart. She has a 99% chance of dying in the operating room, but if you do this and it works, it'll change the course of the development of this drug, and it will save her life. So in April of 1994, I handed my 18-month-old baby over to the most amazing anesthesiologist because I was sobbing. I didn't want her wheeled into an operating room on a gurney, so he carried her in for me. And 8 hours later, they came out to tell me that they couldn't get her off bypass and she was going to die. And a half hour later, they came out again and said something miraculous had happened, and she had come off bypass and was headed back to the ICU and was stable. And I went from having, for the first time, a dying child to having a child who was going to live. The rest of my journey with Chloe lasted another 12 and a half years. I had 4 more kids. So she's the oldest of 5. And on New Year's Eve, 2005, when you have 5 children under the age of 13, we went to a movie, because what else do you do? And Chloe started to complain in the movie theater that she was uncomfortable. And I called one of my nurses. Oh, let me just back up a second. I had a little thing that went on with the insurance company where they let me leave the hospital with 12-hour nursing care, and they were charging $70 an hour for 12-hour care, and the nurse would only work during the day. And so I renegotiated with the insurance company and got myself 24-hour-a-day nursing care at $35 an hour, but I did all of the management of all of the shifts and staffed all the nurses for Chloe's whole life. So that was kind of one of the other jobs that I took on. And I called one of her nurses and I said, she's complaining, and she said, maybe she's getting sick. Is she getting sick? And I didn't really think about it, and then within 3 days, she was in the hospital. She had a very bad bout of tonsillitis, And ultimately, Robin, who had told me we would never do another surgery on her again, said we had to take her tonsils out. And in April of 2006, we went in for a tonsillectomy, and she got septic post-op, and she died from infection. Yeah, so hugely tragic for my entire family, but imagine being 11, 8, 5, and 3, having your sister die, having all of the nurses leave our home simultaneously. These are my other kids. And then 2 months later, having your father leave. So I ended up a single mom of 4 kids in deep mourning, and spent a lot of time healing ourselves, and then ultimately stepped back into the pulmonary hypertension community when Dr. Robin Barst died of lung disease. She had actually had lung cancer, and thought that Chloe and Robin would want me to come back. And they needed me to come back because there was a lot of work to be done. So today, I am the co-founder of PH-Aware Global Association. My 2 business partners, John Hess and Steve Van Wormer's sons, both have pulmonary hypertension. So my journey starts in 1992 when we have nothing, no cell phones, no internet. Fortunately, I had brothers who were doctors. I had one brother who was on 24-hour call from a payphone in the lobby, and the doctors used to ask me if I was reading medical journals in the parent room, and I really had to learn medicine hardcore, like a lot of people here I'm sure have had to do for the people that you love. My business partner, John's son, was diagnosed when he was 5, and he had a quick progression of the disease, and he, at 17, had a bilateral lung transplant. He's now almost 20, and he had a horrifyingly bad experience in, post-operatively. And last summer, he just had his gap year and traveled Europe by himself. My third partner, Steve, his son was diagnosed when he was 4. He's now a senior in high school, and he is on triple combination oral therapy. So we've gone from no therapies. My daughter was actually, I can still to this day walk up to a medical professional at a conference and say, "Hi, I'm Marie Rand," and they ask me back, "Are you Chloe Rand's mom?" Everybody knows that very first trial and what happened, and it brings my heart great joy that that Chloe her spirit continues to live on through the good work of a lot of people, and that we've really changed our world. So today we have 16 approved medications for a rare disease, and probably another 10 or so in clinical trials. And when I met John and Steve, we decided that we were going to form a nonprofit organization that would do something slightly different than what a lot of other people do. So we are a virtual 501c3. We live in 3 different states and 3 different time zones, and we almost never see one another. Except for when John called me at 5:30 this morning to ask me to do something, and he's the one who never calls me. What we do is all based in technology. So we do 2 major things. We raise large-scale global awareness, and we develop technology for research. So on the side of raising large-scale global awareness, 4 years ago, October 1st, actually, 4 years ago, we decided to start. Steve actually called and said, "I think I want to try making a podcast series." So that was 4 years ago, and our podcast series is now downloaded on an average of 20,000 times a month in 110 different countries. It is on every platform that is humanly possible, and if you were to download our I'm Aware That I'm Rare, PH Aware podcast app, you can actually go in and you can, there's a search bar where you can look for different things. So it started out as patient stories. We wanted to empower our patients and our caregivers. It went from that to our really doing a deep dive into some medical information. So every bit of information that is given during the podcast is by a medical professional, and it's their area of expertise. We do a crossover between pulmonary hypertension and any disease that is related to it. So if it's PH and HIV, or PH and SARC, or PH and methamphetamine use, we know all of the connectivity, and we also know the doctors who are studying it, and we'll go to the source and we'll get information. We have a whole series that's called Clinical Trials 101 that's actually agnostic. It's meant to be there for anybody who wants to learn what a clinical trial is. It was delivered by Val McLaughlin, who's an amazing doctor in Michigan, and the purpose was to allow many, many people to be able to understand clinical trials more effectively. I happen to be a strong supporter of clinical trials for obvious reasons, and we really wanted to make sure we got that information out. So we have a really high presence on social media, and we use that to be able to talk to not just our community, but other communities. I have learned to connect to very important places like ATS and CHEST, and so the American Society and CHEST, which are large-scale foundations where they can help us continue our work in good ways, and we often partner with them. And then I don't know, there's our podcast series. And that can be found at that URL below, or you can just go on our website and you'll be able to click right on it. And so our thinking is to elevate, motivate, and radiate information. So we elevated our information to a level where most people thought the patient population wouldn't understand, and we gave it to them anyhow to motivate them to understand their disease better. And then we radiate out that information in as many ways as we possibly can to make sure that as many people can learn about it as possible. I'm not sure. Are you the next slide? You're the next slide. So I'm going back.
That's fine.
Okay. The other piece that we do is we decided to In heart-lung conditions, and specifically in PH, the standard test that is done is called a 6-minute walk test. I don't know how many people have to do the 6-minute walk test or have people who do the 6-minute walk test? It's kind of absurd, right? You walk up and down a hallway, and then they collect some data from you, and that's literally how they're choosing the medication that they're, for the next 6 months, they're choosing your regimen by simple testing like that. So we had this idea. My business partner, John, is the CTO of a software company, and he said, I'm going to go to India, and I'm going to come back with some things, and maybe they'll work for us. Today, that was 5 years ago, today we have developed the ability to do walk, talk, track. Our app is called the Walk, Talk, Track app, and the Walk, Talk, Track app gives you the ability to do a 6-minute walk test anywhere, anytime, through a handheld device or a wristwatch, so it's Apple-based and Android-based, and it is now presently being validated at Stanford University, and we're doing a validation study that includes doing a 6-minute walk test with our device and standardly in clinic, and then a clinic test with an external test outside of clinic test, because we actually take more data. We do altitude, incline. We have to take into consideration the other things that are happening outside of clinic. And we are also doing a second study at the Children's Hospital of Colorado, because that app also does quality of life surveys and patient-recorded outcomes, which are the two biggest buzzwords for the FDA right now. They're really starting to be interested in the patient voice, and so we give and it's pretty elaborate what we did. We built we have a HIPAA-compliant cloud, so all the information goes into this cloud. It's end-to-end encrypted, which means we don't see it. The patient doesn't see it. The only person who sees it is the researcher or the doctor. It's a very nice way to track what's happening for a patient. I'm sure many people know that if you went to the doctor's office and they said, how did you feel 2 months ago? Your answer was going to be, I have no idea how I felt 2 months ago. I fell in love with this idea because I had nurses in my house 24 hours a day, so there was actually accurate documentation on Chloe every hour, 24 hours a day, heart rate, respiratory rate. They were literally watching her all the time, and I could tell 3 or 4 days before she was coming down with something that she was getting sick just by looking at the data. And the Walk, Talk, Track app is going to allow us to do those kind of things. And the talk aspect is going to be a community where people can talk among themselves, either as they're taking their walk or otherwise. It's just a general community where the PH patients can get together and they can talk. Included in the app is our podcasts. As community members, we're allowed into the private Facebook groups, and we sometimes get a little bit frightened by what people are asking questions, and the answers are a little scary because they don't really have accurate knowledge. And so we will often just throw a podcast in, like, hey, maybe you guys should listen to this, to help them better understand what's happening. And the intent really is to empower patients. We were all caregivers, and we really had to empower ourselves to be powerful advocates, and we're trying to help other patients and caregivers have better tools to be able to do that. The last thing I will say that my family does personally, when 9 months after Chloe died, my son Zach landed on Broadway in Les Miserables at 9 years old. And one night he asked me, as we were driving home, if someday if his voice got big, if he could help other people like Chloe. So my kids actually travel around, some of them around the world. I've got one who's in China, so she's doing work there. And they support the pulmonary hypertension community, sometimes on purpose and sometimes by accident. So I'm just going to tell a little. We on October 7th, we do a big awareness raising event on Broadway where Zach calls in about a dozen of his Broadway friends, and we do a night of performance and conversation about pulmonary hypertension and our family's journey. But I will tell this story. My daughter Liv is working in Shanghai for the Walt Disney Company, and she has 3 jobs with them because they always give the busiest person more work to do. And somebody came to her and said there was a fun run. They do something called a March Hare Fun Run, and could she please spearhead it because she was the only one who had event experience on her resume. She's 24. She takes on this event. And she doesn't do anything small, and she's like, Mom, people in China don't know how to raise money. They don't even know what I'm asking for. They don't understand. And she said, but I'm going after it. She raised about 4,000 American dollars, which is a lot of money in China. And about a month after she sent in the money to a foundation called Heart for Hearts, she gets an email that says, there's a picture of a little baby. He's 4 months old, comes from a very poor area of China. Family has nothing. Grandmother runs the farm. Father travels like 20 miles a day just to get to work. And there's this little tiny baby, and they say, thanks to your generous donation, we were able to close a hole in his heart and resolve his pulmonary hypertension. So I will leave you with the fact that I believe that my daughter Chloe is looking down on us every single day, and that she purposefully left me here to do this good work and now be able to share it with all of you in the hopes that I can help in any way, in any disease state, and that the things that we create can be modified so that we can just make this a better world for everyone who's living with rare disease or chronic illness. So thank you very much. Sorry, I made you cry.
You did. I knew your whole story because we'd met and we'd talked and we'd discussed, but if you could have given me a heads up on that hole in the heart thing beforehand, like up here, I'm all choked up, but that's kind of what this week has been, just connecting with people and hearing their stories face to face. So I'm Eden Lord, I'm the founder and CEO of My CityMed. Most importantly, I am Cambria's mom. I got 3 other amazing kids too, but Cam is the catalyst in all of this. And for us, Cambria was not diagnosed on her newborn screen. So in 2009, when she arrived, we thought everything was fine. She was a little orange, but she was okay. We called her the sun-kissed baby because I have O positive blood. My husband is AB positive. She had a positive Coombs test. So he said, oh, she's fine. Her sugars are a little low, but she'll be all right. Pack her up, take her home. She's good to go. So we are living the life. We've got a 3-year-old and a newborn, and everything's awesome. And we go to my parents' house for Father's Day, and we're swimming. The next day we go home, and it's warm in June, and the baby's tired. And I thought, oh, I'll get her up, change her pants. And she goes back down. She's sleepy. They always tell you, let the baby sleep, right? Don't wake a sleeping baby. And I went back in to check her about an hour and a half later, and she was in full-on adrenal crisis. I had no idea what I was looking at. Had no background in anything like that. My caregiving experience up to that point was backing up my mom, who was a primary caregiver for my grandfather with Alzheimer's and stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And then my dad, who had lived through an aortic aneurysm that was ripped so badly they couldn't operate. So I was kind of the backup after college and working contract jobs, and I was the child who was available. So while my mom went back to work full time, I schlepped dad back and forth to doctor's appointments. I had no idea what adrenal insufficiency was. I just knew that I picked up my 4-month-old, who is usually very, very feisty. She had no tone. Her eyes were moving back and forth, side to side. And I'll just be bluntly honest, I'd been cleaning the house that morning, and for the ladies out there, you clean the house in your underwear. You don't want cleaning stuff on your clothing, so I'm running around the house with my baby girl, trying to figure out what to do. And my first thing should have been to call an ambulance, but I had no experience. So I am packing the baby up in the car seat. Thankfully, the 3-year-old dresses herself for the first time by herself ever that day, and here comes my husband through the door. I have forgotten my ID badge. And I'd already called him and said, hey, this is going on. He was already on his way home. So we load Cam in the car, and he puts her in the front seat on his lap, and I'm going, what are you doing? You can't put the baby in the car seat on the front of the car. It doesn't work that way. And I'm going 125 down the highway, and he shoves a bottle in her mouth, and I'm going, oh, man, she has no tone. You're going to choke the baby. We get to the hospital, and they check her glucose levels, and she's at 23. And the nurse looks at me and goes, this is serious. Now, I've got polycystic ovarian syndrome. I'm kind of familiar with blood sugars, but that number startles me. And she goes, well, 23 is okay. And I said, my husband force-fed her a bottle in the car on the way over here. And she stopped at me and she said, that bottle saved your kid's life. So to my husband who's watching at home, thank you again for saving our baby girl. But for us, that began kind of the diagnostic odyssey of trying to figure out what was wrong with Cambria and what had happened. So we got transferred to our children's hospital. That is my baby girl holding my hand. We actually, that was day 1 with the IV in her head. They couldn't place it anywhere else initially. And the nurse came in and said, you might want to get a couple of pictures. And you kind of go, for what? And you don't really put two and two together and think, oh, that's why you think I should get a couple pictures, okay. So she's holding my really poorly manicured hand there, and we were in for 5 days, did not leave her side, had very little information from the physicians. I had a flip phone, so I was unable to do my searches, didn't have a laptop, didn't have access to anything, and I flat out refused to leave. I would not go in the hall. I was terrified something would happen again. And they come in on day 3 and say, we think we know what she has, but we have to do a STEM test. Well, when you do a STEM test in the hospital for Cambria's condition, which she was later diagnosed on that visit with panhypopituitarism and secondary adrenal insufficiency. We've picked up, I think, 4 or 5 other diagnoses since then. But they do a STEM test and they crash the patient on purpose. So insurance has proof that your kid is really sick. So Jeff's at work. I've got my 19-year-old stepdaughter in the corner of the room, keeping my 30-year-old occupied, and they start the STEM test and Cambria starts crashing. And it is a repeat of what I have walked into days before in her crib. And I am telling the nurse, you need to stop. You're done. You're done. You're done. Stop the test. Stop the test. Stop the test. I have 2 nurses in my room because Michael Jackson has just passed away. And everybody else is outside, crowded around the nursing station going, oh my gosh. And I'm in the room screaming, we're done with the test. And they try to bring her back up. They go get the little sugar packets with the foil top and they pop it. And they said, oh, we'll bring her back up. It's no big deal. And nothing happens. And she's on a Dex-10 bag to begin with, but she can't get stabilized, nothing happens. The nurse bolts from the room. I've got kids crying in one corner. I'm frustrated. I can't call my husband right then. And my baby girl is declining. They come back with a tube of Wilton cake gel. You know, like the green cake gel, blue cake gel you write on birthday cakes. And they pop her little mouth open and they start squeezing the cake gel in her mouth. And I said, what the, I won't curse either. What are you up to? And they said that's how they were going to stabilize her sugar. So we learned that she was glucagon resistant. And so that intervention didn't work. We've got people having very unorthodox methods in here. I've never heard of this disease. I don't know what we're doing. The doctors are kind of, you don't really need to know anything except for what we tell you. And we're kind of on our own. So we get ready for discharge day. We're all set. They say, here's your stack of prescriptions. Now, she's glucagon resistant. Don't bother filling that, and don't bother filling this because she won't respond to it. But legally, we have to cover our backsides and give it to you. Fill these, and oh, by the way, you're going to need growth hormone. And your insurance company is not going to want to pay for your growth hormone. So in the meantime, while you're waiting for it, because your daughter is so sugar unstable, and it's such a concern, you're going to take her home, and you're going to wake her up every 90 minutes, and you're going to feed her a bottle of apple juice laced with cornstarch because cornstarch stabilizes your sugars. And we went every 90 minutes, and they said, yes, and if you don't, you will wake up and your baby will be in a coma or will be dead. So we went and bought vibrating watches, we bought alarm clocks, we set alarms on our phones, and from June 21st, is that about, no, June 22nd until mid-October, we did not sleep. My husband continued to hold down a full-time job, and I continued to work my job online from home, which was in online education, and we went to the endocrinologist for a follow-up and had by that time switched because not only had they discharged us with here are your scripts, fill these, here are your scripts, don't, but they also said your daughter has panhypopituitarism and you need to follow up with us in a week. And I went, what? I had nothing written down. I didn't have any pen and paper to write anything down. I wasn't given anything. So I remember walking out with my husband going, Peter Pan. If we remember Peter Pan, then when I get home, I'll look up hormones and Peter Pan and I'll find something. And that's where our research began, was remembering Peter Pan and going home and finding some organizations that maybe had some information for us. But just kind of being discharged without a plan was so overwhelming to us. We switched endocrinologists, and here's this doctor who comes through the door, Dr. Midyat in Kansas City, and says, how's the growth hormone going? He's all perky. We said, what growth hormone? We're still on apple juice and cornstarch. And he kind of stopped for a minute, and he goes, you know what, you sit right there, and I'll be right back. And Jeff and I are kind of looking at each other, and we've got the baby, and we've got the 3-year-old running around. We're thinking, okay. He comes back an hour and a half later in the middle of his workday. He has left the room, come back, and has told us, you will never have to worry about her growth hormone ever again. He had called the insurance company and spoken with their PharmD directly and said, you are getting this kid her medication. There is a proven medical need. We're not fooling around with this anymore. So the following week, we had our lady come out and train us on the injections, and then we started sleeping a little bit more regularly. But for us, it was not knowing kind of where to go, what that diagnosis looked like, who was going to help us, and he was really the first person who stepped up and said, this is unacceptable, and we're going to do something about your daughter's diagnosis and make sure she has treatment. So that was back in 2009, and baby girl's doing great today. We battle a lot of things that pop up as side effects of her treatment. We have had a very long road. She initially was seen in the Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City. Since then, we have added a protocol of her own at the NIH. She is one of 8 known cases with a chromosomal microdeletion that I have passed on to her, so I'm missing a half of one. Thankfully, my husband, my white knight, comes in with an extra half a chromosome, and NIH goes, well, this is kind of different. So now I get to listen to if they ever do anything good, because we've passed it on to the first 3. Our youngest is 14 months and we haven't had her tested. But if they do anything positive, my husband will go, well, you know why? They're more mine than yours. So he likes to take the credit there. But NIH was incredibly helpful for us, and we knew to go to NIH because we'd actually met at a research institution that was assisting us in how to a research institution that had NIH contracts. So that was our go-to place, and that's why we knew of that as a go-to place. So our odyssey has been filled with trying to figure out where to take her. We've ended up at Mayo Clinic, as I said, NIH, Texas Children's Hospital, and actually we are transferring her care to Duke University later this year. So out of all of this with Cambria, it's not advancing for me. You want to give it a go?
There you go.
There we go. We built CityMed, and CityMed is truly, the intention here is to build a roadmap for every diagnosis. So as Marie is listing off all of the things that she does with PHWare, it was freaking amazing as far as having those tools, those podcasts, knowing where those physicians are, knowing where the research is, where is the funding coming from, where is it going. We want to create a one-stop shop roadmap for every diagnosis if we can possibly do it. So starting with symptoms, treatments, all of those resources, locating specialists who are competent and able to treat your condition and your diagnosis, but also ancillary specialists. We pump Cambria full of lots and lots of hormones to keep her alive, but it wreaks havoc on her teeth. So when we're able to find a physician who is a dentist that can come in and help out and kind of give an overview and say, I know how to treat that disease, I know how to treat patients with that diagnosis and provide them this ancillary support, we'll save her teeth. We know what we're doing. Our goal is to try and find those physicians for your disease group and help you locate them faster. And the big thing here is you all are the subject matter experts, not us. So we don't want to reinvent any wheels. We don't want to create a brand new support group. We think already there are amazing support groups that have been created. Let's come alongside these existing organizations and support them and not go looking for something new or not be able to find it and think, oh, I got to start from scratch. So our goal is to bring together all of these resources in one location and help people find what they need a little bit faster with a diagnosis and with treatment options, and promote the awesome work that all of you as advocates do every single day and share your stories and just reduce the time that it takes to find what you need. Part of our initiative is something we call the Rare Fair. Global has been incredibly generous in supporting us with this. It is a 100% virtual event that is actually being held a week from today, and it is set up exactly like a traditional exhibit hall, a traditional event with an exhibit hall, auditorium, patient networking rooms. And our theme this year is Welcome to the Table, because we have so many marginalized families and populations that cannot travel for whatever reason, whether it's medical needs or it's just freaking expensive to get to a conference, but they're missing out on the information, and we're not hearing from them, and we're not appreciating what they bring to the table. So this virtual platform was really our solution to get people involved, host them, get them information, and provide some networking opportunities. We're very fortunate because this event would not exist without a pharma partner who came alongside us and said, our mission is to help patients where they're at, regardless of what their diagnosis is, regardless of if we are able to provide a treatment option for them or not. We want to help you reach patients and make their lives a little bit better. So we're forever indebted to Retrophin for coming up and saying, here, you guys go do your thing and let us know how we can support you in any way possible. And then, as I said, Global Genes has supported us. And if you look up in the upper left or upper right-hand corner, there is a little tiny zebra that is circled in the patient education room. So we are able to take all of the Global Genes toolkits that are out there, and we have a patient education room where you can go out and download a PDF version. Last year, our big story was we had an attendee from Ghana who came in and took all of that information back to his NGOs in his country and shared it, and was so thrilled that he now had a connection to a new resource and new networking opportunities that was made possible by Global Genes participation. So we try to make it as easy as possible. When you go in and you pick up all those flyers, and then you end up with like a pound of paper, and you go, okay, what am I taking on the plane, and what's staying here, and what am I taking a photograph of? We do everything digitally, so you can save whatever you find of interest into the little patient toolkit at the bottom of the screen, and then we leave everything open in its full access for 30 days after the event. So we try to make it as interactive as possible, but if you miss something, everything's available on demand. You can catch a speaker session or anything like that after the fact. And we've had some really fantastic exhibitors. We're excited. Last year we had 6 countries represented. This year we're up to 17. Last year we had 79 different patient groups represented. We're at 59 right now in 23 different states. So the collaboration and the opportunity to reach people where they are, regardless of their ability to travel or whether or not they have the resources, is really something that excites us, because we want to make sure that nobody has to go down the same path that we have been through. So this is a kind of an overview of what we featured in our patient education room last year. We'll have similar things today, but we try to educate people on, like you said, the clinical trials and that resource. That is something that we would have out on the roadmap, but also on this site, so people have access to it 2 different ways. And then, clicker doesn't like me. Down at the bottom, you'll see we also have networking rooms. So we use live chat, and you're able to have discussions with people online and meet them kind of where they're at. I keep coming back to that, but it's so important for us to try to structure things that are more inclusive and have a more of a community feel and bringing people into things. So that's kind of our setup. Our tickets are still available. I am trying really, really hard. We're 100% bootstrapped. We don't have any private investors, so everything we make goes right back into the company. And we do that intentionally because that allows us to be 100% patient focused. When people come onto our site and register and have a user account, we do not sell your data, period, ever. I am fiercely protective of, of the rare community, and if you're trusting us enough to come onto our platform, we're gonna honor that, and we're gonna absolutely respect that you've trusted us to come on and network with us. And you know, it's been such a positive experience for us because we've met people like Marie, and I see so many of you in the audience that I've had the pleasure and honor of working with. And really our goal is just to shine a light on everything that you are doing and use the good work that you're accomplishing to kind of bring it out to a larger audience. This is our attendee stats from last year. We had over 250 registrants, and a good majority of those showed up after Fair Day. So we know it's working. We know that people are interacting with us. We know that they're interested, and we know that we're reaching those populations and making a difference. And of all of the kind of collateral that we had available and all of the different booths and everything else, we had over 3,000 downloads. So whether that be, you know, patient information, or what we love is when we get like 10 questions that you should ask your physician on your first appointment. All of those kinds of tools are so helpful, and they're being used and they're being disseminated. So the other portion of what we're trying to do with the digital platform is use it as a fundraising tool for your nonprofit organizations. So if you are kind of, you know, wanting to have that first event or wanting to offset your budget with a virtual event that connects people, and then in off years you have a physical event, we do everything at cost. So if you're able to go out and secure yourself a $30,000 pharma sponsor, you come back to us and say, okay, I need this many booths, and our specialist from Norway is gonna join us and dial in, then we're able to say, okay, at cost it's going to be this. Let's say it's $10,000. You keep your 20. You put it in your nonprofit organization. Let's use this as a fundraising tool. Let's put that money back in your pocket so you can continue the amazing work you're doing, but let's use this platform to connect your community together and build those relationships so nobody feels left out and we're not missing out on important data, information. You know, we developed so many protocols here in the US that we could just pick up and lift out and drop into another, with everything you're doing, the patient communities that we could reach globally. it's absolutely phenomenal. So we want to help, and we want to provide a tool, and we want to help put some money back in your pockets.
I don't think we have it in their slides, so.
If Angie
Okay,
wanted.
thank you guys very
think
much.
that's
That was
it.
very informative. Okay, so for the people that are watching online, you can submit your questions. Wow, there's a lot of people in here. And then I'm going to moderate a Q&A. So if anybody's watching on live stream, or if anybody's in the room and isn't comfortable asking a question, you can put it there, and I have my phone, and I can read the questions off to our speakers. But is there anyone in the room that has a question for our speakers? Okay, all right.
I have a question about the podcast creation that you guys developed and getting it off the ground. Can you talk a little bit about how you started to engage and develop this, significant monthly following that you guys have, and your strategies for getting your podcast off the ground?
Yes. I wish my business partner, Steve, were here, because I think Steve, for the first 6 months, was like this the whole time, because he was really the person who chose to do this. Steve happens to be a content creator for Fox Sports, so content is kind of his game. And the thing that I didn't mention is that if you are to listen to ours, they're highly branded. We're very invested in branding as a group, and brand recognition. And we had there's a large team at Fox Sports who have been friends of Steve's for a long time. So in the creation of these, they're edited by the Fox editors, and so that has helped us a lot in the quality of what we make. And if anybody listens to them, you'll actually see that at the end, every single person that we speak to says, "Hi, I'm Marie Rand, and I'm aware that I'm rare." They say our tagline at the end of everything. We have a fairly large population of pulmonary hypertension patients, and we actually know a lot of them. So we started there. We started with content based on storytelling, because we knew as community, we knew it was important to tell the stories, and we knew other people would gain something from listening to those stories. So that's where we started. And I don't think Steve sleeps, because 24 hours a day, no matter what somebody asks us on social media, he answers it. But we did have one night where we started our Facebook page, and he's like, "How many followers do you think we get tonight? Like, how many people do you think we could get likes?" I said, "I don't know, let's try." So I live in Princeton, and he lives in Burbank, California, and we just went at it, like asking all of our friends in private messages, until Facebook contacted us and told us to stop. And then we kind of do that with every platform. We just keep reaching and reaching, and a lot of it has to do with if you have somebody who really knows how to write a tweet or write a proper Instagram message, and how to tag properly or hashtag properly. And we made sure that we stayed very focused on, when we delivered a message, that we connected to everyone. So we never send a message out without ATS and NORD and CHEST all being tagged in it, so that they're looking at it. And what we wanted was for people to start looking at it. Then we went, one of the other things that happened with the podcast series was we had somebody contact us who still writes an online forum for doctors that are outside of our affinity group, that are general practitioners or family docs. And they said, do you have a written version of this? So we have all of our podcasts are transcribed into writing, so that we can give them out in different platforms. And we then had somebody come and ask us if they were in Spanish, so we had them all translated into Spanish. And it's kind of amorphic, but it's when somebody asks for something, we create it, and we create it very fast, because we all know that in this world, things come and go really quickly. So if it's asked for, I'm not kidding, in like 2 days, Steve will have it translated. But to answer your question, we started by building a really strong online social media presence, so that we could, once we started to develop this tool, we could talk about the tool over and over again. And when people started to realize that we were talking to the foremost experts in the world about the disease, they started listening. My favorite piece of it is that our industry partners are listening. I just got a message last week from an industry partner who tells me that every morning when he shaves, he listens to our podcast series, and he happened to listen to the journey of a father whose daughter ultimately died after a lung transplant. I actually met his daughter when she was 13 and didn't meet him until after his daughter had passed away in her 20s. I met her by accident in the hospital. But he said, and I think this is really important, sometimes we forget what we're doing. Industry forgets what they're working towards. And when we get to hear things like the journey of a family, like my story and Eden's story, he said it revitalizes me. It wants me to go back into work and work harder. And they're traveling, and it looks glamorous, but industry is working really hard in their own way. So I would say if the steps would be really strong social media presence, figure out how to make some connectivities, and then from there, when you develop your product, I mean, it's a product, so we sell it like it's a product. That's what we do. And it's never ending. I mean, every single day Steve gets a, so our podcasts are released twice a week in audio form and twice a week in written form for the past 4 years. We have 270 podcasts, and people wake up to, you have your new I'm Aware That I'm Rare podcast. I wake up to it, and he has not missed once. They are, and he drilled it home, and he worked it. There was a lot of behind the scenes stuff. When we got Pandora, it was like we should have thrown a 3 time zone party because we live in 3 different time zones. But he was like, Pandora was the last holdout. We are now on every single platform that exists. They can find us everywhere. It took him 4 years to get there, but he did it, and that's what it takes. It takes the ability to, you set the game plan and you just follow the game plan.
Hi, Eric Hartman with the Croydering Research Foundation. My question, when you talked about translating into Spanish and also your virtual conference, have you had any experience, because many of us have global patient communities, any experience in real-time translations or offering separate streams with translations into, say, French or English, or German, depending on the language? Because I've been to conferences where we've had live translation to at least one language, and I didn't know if you knew of a facility where there could be simultaneous auto streams depending upon language.
We have it. When we get to a point where we have a contingent of patients from a specific language, and it's not just a one-off here or one-off there, we have that ability. I believe it's over 20 languages that we can currently translate to, and once we have the need for it, we will definitely roll it out, but it's already there, it's up, it's going, it's active, it's ready to roll once we have the need for it. Because that's one of our concerns too. I mean, you're putting everything out there, but you can't access it necessarily if you're in Russia and don't speak English, so yeah.
There were so many people that wanted to ask questions.
I feel like I'm about to make a fool of myself, but then they say there's no such thing as a stupid question. So the first one, which is easy, where is that conference next week?
It is therarefair.com. Okay. And it's 100% online.
Oh.
So there's no travel, there's no going anywhere. It's 100% hosted online.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, and the second one is, I think being tech savvy is kind of relative. My husband thinks I'm a genius. I think I don't have a clue what you're talking about. So are you offering to help people set this up, or are you just giving an example of what you...
Oh, no, absolutely. You go out, and for your disease group, all that I ask is that you go out and you find a sponsor for yourself, because you're the subject matter expert in your field. I'm not.
Okay.
I will bring everybody's wheels in the same garage, but I'm not going to reinvent anything, because that's not my job, that's not my aim. Mm-hmm. So you go out and you find me a sponsor, you come back and you say, Eden, I need your team to build out 10 booths, we have 10 exhibitors, we have 3 doctors coming in from 3 different countries. We need to set up live streams so they can participate and have a live chat. And I go back and I say, okay, what's our cost to do all of this? How do we set this up at cost? And I come back to you and I say, hopefully a very low number, like $10,000, and we build out everything 100% on the platform.
And this is totally
We fill your
online.
exhibitor booths. So, when you go out and you pick up those pages off of everybody's tables, that's all in the booth. They can download those items. One of the goals for next year is to have swag boxes. So, how we all walk around with our bags and, we get the cups and the straws and the pamphlets, and have those boxes shipped out, because now you really are engaged. You really are involved. You're getting the same stuff that everybody else who attends in person is getting. And then hopefully I want to secure like an Uber or a Grubhub and have meal vouchers. So now there's opportunities for our farmer partners to come in, like they sponsor our meals and our snacks, but to have that in somebody's pocket right in front of them. They're a captive audience. They're engaging. They're wanting to do all of this. But for our nonprofits, absolutely, we set it up 110%, and all you have to do is show up on Fair Day or your event day and connect with your audience. We're just trying to build communities and bring people together, because there's been so many fractures and fissures in different patient groups. We're just here to help. No underlying agenda, except for the fact that it feels good.
Okay. And Marie, the same? Or is yours, I got the sense yours was more geared for your illness, the
Podcast.
Yeah, our podcast series right now is geared towards pulmonary hypertension and the connected diseases, but that doesn't stop me from podcasting other things, meaning it's known as a pulmonary hypertension podcast series, but we've now expanded beyond that. So the way that it would work for me would be if you contact me directly and want to, and have a specific topic or something that needs to be spoken about your disease state, all you need to do is connect us to an expert who's willing to talk on a specific topic, and there may be more than one topic, there may be more than one expert, and then we would share that on our platform, but also it gives you a tool to be able to share out.
Okay, thanks very much.
Is there any other questions? Okay. I think I'm supposed to.
There were other questions.
Quick.
Thank you, Marie and Aiden, for sharing your experience and expertise. Thinking of digital resources, if you haven't already connected with other attendees here, don't forget to check out our appointment system found through our app and keep the digital community growing. Jump onto the Global Genes website to create your own user portal for more resources and information. If you can take the quick survey, we would appreciate your feedback. And as we move into our networking break sponsored by Regeneron, don't forget to visit the Exhibitor Pavilion sponsored by PRA Health Sciences, and check out our poster presentations sponsored by Aldebaran. Again, we want to thank our speakers, and we'll see you after the break. Thanks, you guys.